there's a chance to course correct it, but it would take a new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire. You got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, it's got to go. Either you're in for war fighting, and that's it. And that's the only litmus test we care about.
Pete Hegseth has brushed aside concerns that President Donald Trump's firing of the top U.S. military officer, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, could be seen as injecting politics into the military.
This is a reflection of the president wanting the right people around him to execute the national security approach we want to take. And I have a lot of respect for C.Q. Brown. I got to know him over the course of a month. He's an honorable man, not the right man for the moment.
Hello, Bobby Jones here for MeidasTouch and Ballard Media Networks. The clip you just saw was done in the fall of 2024, right before the presidential election that returned Donald Trump to the White House. In this video, you see Pete Hegseth, then a civilian and Fox News commentator, give his opinions on what needs to happen in the United States military to make it more, quote, combat effective. What's interesting to me is in his role of Fox News commentator and him promoting the book that he had just written, he made the obvious leap that the policies and programs that the military was instituting at the time were not only detrimental to the United States, but also making it hard for people to say they wanted to join the military. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Military recruiting was on the uptick and has continued based on various programs implemented under the prior administration. But that's not why I'm going to talk to you today. I want to talk to you about how culture wars can now make things not only less safe for the average American citizen, but less safe abroad. Now, I've done videos about the firings of some generals and admirals that have taken place, but there is a pattern that I want people to focus on. And that pattern is, it's not just about the lack of diversity that the current administration is pushing, but there is a war on intellect that is taking place within the world's most powerful military. While there are many things that I can focus on as far as firings here in the last 7 months of the Trump administration, I want to focus on these next few firings.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth fired some of the military's top lawyers, cutting the judge advocates general for the Army, Navy, and Air Force. Before meeting with his Saudi counterpart Monday, Hegseth offered his reasoning for the firings.
So ultimately, I want the best possible lawyers in each service to provide the best possible recommendations, no matter what, to lawful orders that are given. And we didn't think those particular positions were well suited. And so we're looking for the best.
And the Pentagon not explaining why yet, just the latest in a string of senior military officials ousted in the last few months. Air Force Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz now out as the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the same agency that weeks ago drew the ire of President Trump after an early intelligence assessment contradicted claims from the White House and other top administration officials that the U.S. had, quote unquote, obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities in those 3 bombings ordered by the president. Now, at the time, administration officials said that DIA assessment was too preliminary. The Pentagon is now declining to say whether Cruz was forced out, and if so, why. Reacting to this, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee accusing the administration of treating critical national security roles as a, quote, loyalty test. A series of top Pentagon and intelligence brass have been fired since the president took office, including the former head of the National Security Agency, the former vice chief of staff of the Air Force, and former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown.
The firings highlighted in these video clips relay 2 things. Number 1, an absolute lack of accountability legally. The removal of the JAG Corps' top officers in the United States military signals the tacit nod to whatever the Trump administration wants to utilize the military for. It is not a coincidence that we have seen the National Guard utilized in ways the United States of America have never seen before in almost 240 years of existence. The marching down the streets of American citizens by American servicemen and women with weapons now, without proper training or any declaration of emergency, is unprecedented. In the military way of issuing orders, there would have been a legal check to make sure that the orders that even the commander-in-chief himself would have wanted implemented would have been checked by legal authorities within the United States military. But instead, we have heard nothing from the JAG Corps of any service, and we are now seeing military lawyers in Washington, D.C. being brought in to possibly help prosecute civilian criminal activity. This is what happens when you do not have the proper checks on such significant power. This is also what happens when you allow your military to implement domestic law enforcement practices without any training. Additionally, the firing of the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency is significant. Now, this goes back, as the clip just showed, to the assessment of the strikes the United States had against Iran in their B-2 bombing campaign in support of the conflict with Israel. The fact of the matter is, the Defense Intelligence Agency has to tell the truth to power, whether it's the president, whether it's the press, whatever, because we cannot operate as a military force in a false reality. So a true assessment was made. It was not liked by the president, and the president wanted this man fired. Here's the question that I have for all the people watching this. If an actual global conflict happens, how can you trust the intelligence that the United States military is going to be operating off of, that civilian intelligence is going to be operating off of, if you know for a fact that if you give bad news, no matter how accurate it is, it's going to be removed? This has also happened in the Bureau of Labor Statistics in a completely different sphere in the United States, where the job numbers weren't what the president of the United States wanted. So he put a political appointee in place of an actual career statistician. These are dangerous precedents. But in the military in particular, the United States military, especially its officer corps, is often put into very dangerous situations that have a lot of gray. And it's up to those officers, those senior non-commissioned officers, to turn gray into as much black and white as possible and settle a chaotic situation. You cannot do that without an actual accounting of real facts. And by removing the head person in charge of intelligence that is funneled to the United States Armed Forces, we are watching politics put the actual well-being of Americans in jeopardy. As a matter of fact, Senator Mark Warner from Virginia made this exact claim this week when he heard about the firing of the head of the DIA. With the recent round of firings that Hegseth has ordered, something else has moved to the forefront along with the war on intellect, and that is political alignment. So it's been reported that President Trump wants to interview every possible 4-star candidate for promotion before actually being promoted. This was done with Pete Hegseth's full recommendation in order to make sure that top military leaders politically see the world the same as Donald Trump. Now, this is an unprecedented litmus test that has been imposed in the Department of Defense. Speaking of which, he wants to change the whole term of Department of Defense back to Department of War, signaling a more aggressive mindset. That plugs right into what I'm talking about. They want 4-star generals and 4-star admirals who see the world as might makes right only. And to have personnel in positions that can not only relay that message, but convey it just by being looked upon. This is why you see the policy changes that are making it harder for women to serve and for minorities to serve, from hair regulations and grooming regulations to medical access for women. But make no mistake, the political alignment of the top of the United States military to the current commander-in-chief or the current administration flies in the face of how the United States military has operated since before it was a country. When George Washington finished the Revolutionary War, he went to the Capitol at the time, Annapolis, Maryland, and surrendered his sword, meaning he was no longer in charge of a military and that he was now a civilian. This is significant because he did not pick back up that sword when he was elected the first president / commander-in-chief of the United States. And since that moment, the United States has gone out of its way to make sure its military developed its officer corps separate of political influence. Now we're seeing it both at the highest ranks and all the way into our service academies where they're trying to control what you can read, what you can see, what you can say. It's dangerous. The shaping of this corps, of this officer corps, and the rest of his military by Pete Hegseth goes back to the book that he published right before becoming Secretary of Defense. He has not backed off of anything, and Trump is in full lockstep with him. The problem with that is our most brilliant, our most intellectual, our most diverse in thought candidates may never step foot in uniform because they do not feel like they are welcome, and most importantly, cannot pursue the excellence that has made the United States military the most formidable fighting force the world has ever seen.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.